God. Position. Okay, here we go. No bumpy. No. Okay, we're back. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. There's copies for those people. Okay. Alex, have you ever done this book before?
Never done. I just came.
Oh man. Okay, it's good. It's good to jump in. It's always good to jump in. Okay. Testing 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're here in Sefer Yetzirah, and we're going to be starting on page 51. Now, as we always say, Sefer Yetzirah is basically broken down into what we call a Mishnah. Mishnayot. For people who are familiar with when the oral law was first written down by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in 200 BCE, I believe. So he originally had to write down the oral tradition, and he had to put it in a very pocketed bullet form. And this is very much the same way. You'll see it. It's like almost like very abstract, almost poetic form, but it's very meditative. Some people, let's say like Rabbi Kaplan, how he basically gave a commentary on this book, was basically did what many classic commentators do, which is they find references all over the oral tradition and the written tradition, and then kind of bring it to you, right? So in other words, you'll read the first words, 10 Sefirot of nothingness. Well, there's nothing in the Tanakh really about that, but it is. But let's say their vision is like the appearance of lightning. Notice how the appearance of lightning on this Mishnah right here. Their vision is like the appearance of lightning. Now notice how his appearance of lightning, right, is in quotes. So Rabbi Kaplan will go anywhere, everywhere in the entire oral law and look for wherever it talks about the topic of appearance of lightning. Okay? Just to let you know, that's how he does his commentary. So sometimes, we forgot to leave the door open. Do you know how to do it? Alex?
No, I don't.
Okay.
How do you do it?
There's a magic key. It's okay. Okay, so this is one way that this book is understood in terms of the commentary of bringing different sources in, but then again, what happens when you bring too many ideas? What happens when you have too many ideas? You don't get nothing. We have a phrase called tafasta maruba lo tafasta. If you grab too much, you don't get anything. Now, since he is writing about Kabbalah, he wanted to be obscure, so therefore he feeds a lot here, and then basically you could almost read this and you get some insights, but maybe not the thing. So there's different commentators who say this has to be understood completely meditative. This is a meditative device, and these are basically meditations. So the first weeks I'm going through kind of fast just to get the bullets, and then we're going to put chapter 1 together into a meditative experience. Okay, that's my goal. So we're first going to look at it for the first time, try to take it apart, try to understand it, and then we'll put chapter 1 together into the meditative experience. Okay? So, because you know something, bottom line, it really has to be experienced, as we're going to see. Okay? Sometimes you could talk about certain things and sometimes you can't. So the first chapter, as we speaks about the 10 Sefirot. As the 10 Sefirot, if you don't have a diagram, you can go ahead and look in page 29. There's a great picture there of the 10 Sefirot. The 10 illuminations, okay? And these we always speak about are the garments of God. These are the garments, or we'll call it the guiding forces. We'll call it the guiding forces in which God guides his creation. So in other words, sometimes we'll have different experiences of things in the world. And the idea really here is, but by the way, if you haven't, some people haven't been experiencing this is the genetic code of the universe, okay? The spiritual genetic code of every single thing that exists has to tie in to one of these Sefirot. And the way I always describe it as, and I don't stop describing it as, you have to describe it like this. Here's, okay, one of you she'll share with her. Okay, fine. Look at it as a projector, the film, and the screen. We always have to view reality like that. The projector is just basically light, and then you'll have the film, and then you'll have the screen. Okay? So we look at that as the world is the screen, the film is the Torah, and the light is the light of God. So when you think about it, every single thing right now, as we talk, is being projected every single moment from the film. We are all projections.
So there's the projector, the screen, and the light?
You got it. No, the screen, the film, and the projector screen. And it's projector light. We'll call it like that. God's will is willing us every single moment in creation. And it is our goal is to reconnect with that light. We are vehicles, we are our vessels. Actually, we're actually what we call it in the process of becoming vessels for receiving the infinite light. And God gave us steps how to do that, how to connect. Torah and mitzvot in general, and then there's more specific and more deeper, which is these 10 Sefirot. That if we look at it like the projector, the film, and the screen, everything's being projected, including us, okay? Every single thing, in terms of the film, hooks up into one of these 10 Sefirot. Every single thing. We say some things, we have an experience of wisdom. Has anybody ever had an experience of wisdom before?
No.
This means no. This means yes. See, so whoa! Okay? Some people have an experience of seeing unbelievable acts of kindness. Some people see God's gevura, His power. Some people have an experience of beauty. Some people have an experience of dominance, discipline. Some people have an experience of what called splendor or empathy, or hod, that's number 8. Some people have the experience of commitment, and some people have the experience of being completely empty. Okay? And once again, the idea here is to know these Sefirot, because we have to hook up every single thing that is being projected in creation to those Sefirot. I gave some examples last week. Water is kindness. Wouldn't you say so? A knife is gevura, or power. Okay? The sun is also, you could say, is kindness, because it shines on everyone. The moon is, we'll call that malchut, because the moon is empty. Every single thing in creation has to be hooked up to one of these Sefirot. And the goal is, once again, to lose the connection of the physical world, to try to start to see things differently. The big thing is, always, as we always talk about, perception, right? Everything is about perception. How you look at it will be how you feel, your reaction to it, okay? So here's the idea as we're doing our exploration through the 10 Sefirot again. 10 Sefirot of nothingness. As we know, going back to page 51, 10 Sefirot of nothingness. Esa Sefiros bli ma. It always begins with the same thing, bli ma, which means without whatness. Actually, I have a photocopy here. You could share with that, okay? There you go. There you got a page on your own. Everybody's... There you go. I got extra pages. I thought I had more. Is there more there? I thought I did 4 of them.
I forgot.
That's all good. Okay.
If you have a book and you need it.
Those are... I ran out of time to make more copies, but God willing, we'll be more organized. Eser Sefirot blima. There's 10 Sefirot of what? Without what? That's what it literally means. Eser Sefirot blima. He calls it nothingness. That's how he translated. But it means without whatness. Now, every single line of this whole chapter, it always begins with those first 4 words. 10 Sefirot without what? Okay? In other words, basically, as we say, the 10 Sefirot on their essence, in terms of their essence, cannot be understood and definitely cannot be verbally expressed. They are something that need to be only experienced, and you cannot even experience the essence of these illuminations, the essence of these garments, but we can experience what comes from these garments, what is expressed from them. So now we get into something. Sophia san kamari habesek. Their appearance is like the appearance of lightning. Their limit has no end, and his word in them is running and returning. They rush to his saying like a whirlwind, and before his throne they prostrate themselves. So this is quite, as you see, as you read it, pretty poetic, wouldn't you say? What is it talking about, Rabbi? Okay, this is the experience, but we're just going to look at it now from the point of view of Rabbi Kaplan, and then, God willing, when we finish the chapter, we'll put it into a whole meditation.
Isn't there some place in the Tanakh where it says running and returning?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's the best part. That's the best part. I can't even describe running and returning. He gets a go at it. He has to take a shot. He brings from, the prophecy in Ezekiel. But we actually experience that all the time, running and returning, like the angels do. And it's definitely from the prophets. But like I say, for me to describe it, I was trying. When I was looking at this text, I'm going, no. The running and returning that I've experienced in my life will not be yours, and you have to experience it for yourself. We'll get to it. Okay? But let's talk about the vision. Their vision. So here he brings down, the word for vision here is Sophia. Because it says Sophiatan Kamari Habesek. There's Sophia, which usually denotes a prophetical or mystical vision. Can you imagine waking up every morning? Really, you have to program yourself before you go to sleep. And before you go, right? You say your Hamapil, you say your blessing for going to sleep at night, and all of those blessings. You have to program your mind to say, tomorrow I'm going to have an incredible mystical experience. Actually, don't even limit it. Tomorrow is going to be filled with mystical experiences. Or you can say cosmic, or use whatever word you want. You can say life enhancing if you want to bring it more down to earth. But imagine if you would picture that in the morning. First of all, you picture it before you go to bed to program your mind. And that so when you wake up in the morning, you will be already looking forward to seeing the world in a completely different way. Coming from more emunah, from more faith, knowing God is completely directing every single thing in your life to perfection, and being absolutely blown away with the mystical aspect or the cosmic or the spiritual. I can hardly wait to see the spiritual experiences I'm going to have today. Can you imagine? The Baal Shem Tov says the first thought you wake up in the morning stays with you the whole day. Very important, the first thoughts in the day. Very important. And I read another book, and it made so much sense to me. It wasn't a holy book. Some guy, self-help, pretty good, okay? And he says, like what I told you now, you have to program yourself to have the thought in the morning. In other words, before you go to sleep, you have to make the affirmation that you're going to think a great thought in the morning. Whatever thought. And just once you tell yourself that, go to sleep, and you wake up with it, it's with you the whole day. Changes your whole day. Okay? So they want to use it for something, and who knows what. I'm going to express my potential, which is great and important, and you have to do it. But they are more into today I'm going to make money, right? Right? So we want to use it for the more spiritual purposes, okay? So here he says the word vision, Sophia, which usually denotes a prophetical or mystical vision. Actually, Sophia is like a vision. a vision of the future, okay? Which is also a very important thing to do visualizations. People have to also in the morning, also recommend it, to do a visualization, right? Of what you want to accomplish that day, what kind of person you want to be, to have actually set aside a certain time, spend a minute, spend 5 minutes, to visualize how I want to grow in a more profound and sincere way. So that's Sophia. It's a forward vision, okay? The Heichalot, an ancient mystical text which might be contemporary to Sefer Yetzirah, written by some sages, I think Nechunya ben Hakana, speaks of the vision Sophia of the Merkava, a vision of the Merkava. What is the Merkava? The Merkava is the divine chariot seen in Ezekiel's vision. The term is used to denote the mystical experience on its highest levels. And that doesn't mean a mystical experience on its highest levels, you disappear and you go up. No. That means you see every single thing around you infused with godliness. This was the great machlokas between the Misnagdim and the Hasidim. The Misnagdim had a difficult time with that, okay? But, of course, the Hasidim, did I switch it? No, the Hasidim held the Tzimtzum, when God, so to speak, withdrew to make creation because he was filling all of existence. He had to make a space for existence to be. Was that a literal withdrawal, or was it a conceptual withdrawal? Oh. Right? So there was one author who did say literal, because if you look at the Ari's writings, and we've all done this before, it's very abstract, geometric figures of a sphere and a line and Sefirot and circles and among circles. It's very abstract, and he doesn't really explain it. So it leaves everybody else to figure out, is it literal or not literal? Of course, there was one huge rabbi who did say it was literal. And from that, a whole school of thought kind of manifested. Not all of the Misnagdim. The Misnagdim, it's a complicated issue. From the Nefesh HaChaim, they hold, we can't deal with it. So we're not. Okay? We're going to deal with the God that we can handle. Okay? How we can handle it. We're not going to deal with something we can't handle. We can't handle that God is infusing a rock or a tree. The Hasidim are, no. God is infusing everything, right? And you have to learn from every single thing around you. Right? The famous story, the Baal Shem Tov, he wanted to show his students something marvelous. And he says, I want you to look at this leaf on that tree. And they looked at the leaf, and the wind blew, and of course the leaf blew off. And when they followed that leaf, and it rolled through the wind, and it rolled down this hill, and they followed, and finally the leaf got wedged, like under a branch, a fallen branch. And they go and they observe the leaf, and they see there's a worm right there. It starts eating. And you see, God is very exact. He had to blow that wind perfectly to feed that worm. Everything. So we have to see God in everything. And that's all of our training. We're all in training, right? Watch God training, whatever you want to call it, okay? So the idea here is everything is infused, okay? So that's the Merkava in a certain aspect. And for us, there's the higher levels of Merkava, which, no one ever came and taught me, and that's, a very high mystical vision. But for us, when we talk about Merkava, we're talking about God is like infusing everything. And to start, you have to start to become aware of that, okay? The Sefer Yetzirah, going on, the Sefer Yetzirah is now describing how the Sefirot appear in a mystical vision. In earlier sections, the text spoke of exercises used to visualize the Sefirot, which I don't know how you can visualize the Sefirot when it says it's blima. You're not going to figure it out, okay? Well, the way that they do it actually is to try to go to a depth of all dimensions. We say that the universe is basically 5 dimensions, right? There's space, time, and consciousness. We did this last week. Space basically has 6 directions, That's really the 3 dimensions, but we'll call it the 6. 3 dimensions, height, width, and depth. Time, which is going backward and forward. And then there's also consciousness, which is good and evil. So you can go to depths of that by just meditating on space. Space is probably the easiest one if you just like try to go behind you forever, for endless. In your mind, you could do that. The speed of mind is faster than the speed of light. So you can go, would you believe it? Yes, whatever your mind is, that's where you are. You could you can go on Jupiter right now if you wanted to, right? Not that you would want to, but, okay? Anywhere you want. The speed of mind is faster than the speed of light. So, in any case, you can go, like, in terms of the directions, if you just end it and go into the depths of it, to see how expansive it is. You can go into time, kind of like the exercise that we did last week, where you'll try to go as far back as you can to where before creation. You can try to go forward in terms of your mind. And then you can try to go to a depth of evil. Anyways, that was the vision there, and those who have the book can read that we kind of didn't cover that last week. In earlier sections, the text spoke of exercises used to visualize the Sefirot, and now it describes their appearance, which is also strange because we say they're 10 Sefirot without what? Which means you can't visualize, and they don't have an appearance. Okay? Let's see what he says. The Bahir, another very ancient text, explains that the word Sophia. So now you see how his text is going? He brings you one Sophia, right? From Ezekiel. It's a vision. It's the Merkava, right? And now he's going to the Bahir, another book. So he strings sometimes different commentaries together on what that word means. So Sophia is derived from the root Safa, indicates that one is looking down from a high place. In the previous section, the Sefer Yetzirah spoke of the Sefirot as 10 depths. When one looks into a depth, however, one is usually looking downward. In the Heichalot, the mystical experience is often described as a descent in a downward direction, and it is called descending to the Merkava. Like I said, I don't have experience with this, okay? Usually in a dream going down, it ain't a good thing. In a dream, if you're going up, that's a good thing, okay? So going down, it's a strange thing, but we'll leave it for your dreams. One reason why gazing at the Sefirot is called a descent is because in order to accomplish this, one must attain Hochmah consciousness, as discussed earlier. For those who have never been in this class before, what is Hochmah consciousness? I had a great conversation today. One of my clients went to the Antarctica for the holidays. Not for Hanukkah, he's not Jewish. He went for the holidays, New Year's. Took his family and went to Antarctica. It's summertime there now, even though I doubt it's warm. Okay.
Do they have any infrastructure there?
Listen, this is what he described to me, okay? But as he described it, it was quite interesting. First of all, I had to ask, did you see penguins? And he goes, did I see penguins? Okay? You can't not see penguins. But he described that they were camping. Apparently they were camping out wherever they were staying. I believe it was a cruise, but they camped out, and it was warm. I don't know how it was warm. Okay? Like I say, I don't know exactly what structure he was in. But here you are in the Antarctica, and he couldn't sleep at night because it was so quiet. And as soon as he said that, I went, whoa, I can get a sense of that silence, where there's not a bird. I mean, nothing. Absolute deafening silence. And can you imagine yourself, and you can, right now as I'm speaking this, you are putting yourself to some degree in that spot, in that space, where it's absolutely deafening. And then in that spot, where you can put yourself in deafening silence, that's Hochmah consciousness, because you're entering into the space of no thought. The space of Hochmah consciousness is the seed. It's mostly associated with our right brain, but it's the seed that has no thought. Like the seed, if you cut it, it doesn't have a picture of the tree. Hochmah consciousness, also another way to get to, a simpler way to get to Hochmah consciousness. We might have done this before. Forgive me for doing it again. There's a certain guy, he does a certain breathing technique. His name is Wim Hof. He's called the Iceman. He broke a record sitting in ice for like an hour and 45 minutes, okay? He does a lot of crazy stuff, okay? Glutton for punishment. But actually, whatever. He teaches people now that the frozen water is just a headspace, right? You ever been in frozen water before, Alex? Right? He guides people to mamish do hikes in the snow in their bathing suit for like 45 minutes, hike up a mountain in freezing cold Poland weather, okay? Because he teaches people, it's a great training. Actually, there's a woman who does it, and my wife went. They do exercises, they guide you through breathing techniques, and then you go sit in a cold bath. She puts ice cubes in, ice cold, sit in that bath for 2 minutes, okay? It's awesome because you know why? When you're in there, you're freaking out. You completely rewire your system because you have to realize you have to overcome this. It's like a mini total test that you have to overcome it, and therefore the experience gets you forget about all the stuff in the world. You forget about certain little petty things because this is cold, okay? But you even have to overcome that. But I don't want to get into that, sorry, that's a side point. But the idea here that he leads you on a breathing, and his breathing techniques is pretty cool, and you can do this in the morning, I recommend it. You got to oxygenize yourself, and you let it out, not breathe out with force. You do that 30 times, but then this interesting part is what he gets you to is after the 30th breath, you take that breath, and then you just don't breathe. In other words, you breathe that out, you breathe out, not breathe in and hold it. You breathe out and let go, and you don't breathe. He tries to get his students to do that for like 3 minutes, right? I think I can maybe do it for a minute. But interestingly enough, that area where you are not breathing, you are completely shut down, and you have to put yourself into the place of no thought. The place of Hochmah consciousness is the place of no thought. When you get there, that's where all creativity comes in. Okay? Then, of course, when that comes in, you have to practice. That's when Bina takes over and says, okay, how do I implement that thought? Okay? So, I'm on the last paragraph. One reason why gazing at the Sefirot is called the descent is because in order to accomplish this must one first attain Hochmah consciousness, as discussed earlier. In the array of the Sefirot, however, Hochmah is the highest, at least of those which are approachable. In climbing the tree of the 32 paths of wisdom, one must begin by attaching himself to Hochmah. That's really interesting because it's on the top of the tree. How can you climb the tree? I got to climb the tree, but how can I start off on top of the tree if I'm climbing the tree? Right?
Wait, you got to throw the rope up.
Oh, throwing a rope. No one handed any. Did anybody hand you a rope? Right? Climb the tree, but you have to start on the top on the top part of the tree.
But it's an upside down tree.
Oh yeah.
Attach.
No, it's not.
You got to attach to it.
Listen, I'm not asking for answers. You're
I'm
supposed to
asking a
dwell
question.
with the question.
I'm asking a question, actually.
That's good. Okay, you did. I
It's
thought you were
kind of a
coming with an
question.
answer by throwing the rope.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm wondering if the rope, if there's like how do you attach yourself to a top, like you're climbing? How do you attach yourself to something way up?
That's the question.
And then climb up.
How can you climb up a tree if you have to start at the top part of the tree?
Do you have to start at the top?
You know, if you know what Cohens are. Have you ever heard of Cohens? Not me, not my name, Cohen, but there's a thing called Cohens.
Priest.
What?
Is it priests?
It's from the Buddhist monks. They have these statements, C-O-E-N, Cohens.
Oh,
Oh, sorry, I'm not pronouncing it right.
I might be wrong.
They would have these. The masters would give their students a statement that they would have to meditate on for 6 years. And then they would come back after the meditating on it for 6 years and come back and discuss it with the master to see if they've got it, right? Until somebody came and they printed the answers. Put it on YouTube. On Google.
Footnotes.
They made them so angry, those monks. In any case, right? So one of the just to throw this at you, one of the Cohen's, and they have a few of them, you can Google it, is what is the sound of one hand clapping? The Jew always comes up with the answer right away. Actually, if you do this with kids, and I did this in a room with kids, and you know how many hands went?
That's one hand squeezing.
Oh, I'm going to tell you, 50 hands. We got this. We got this. I don't need no 6 years, Rabbi. Okay? So, it's a more, of course, there's many mystical aspects to what is the sound of one hand clapping, of course. It relates to the oneness of God and God making a creation, because God is one. He is all there is. And yet, there's a clapping. Okay? So usually you need two things to clap, right? Go figure. It's just one thing that leaves you. You understand? It's a statement that kind of like gets you to drift, okay? Gets you to like, whoa, what's that? Okay? So here, he says, in climbing the tree of the 32 paths of wisdom, one must begin by attaching himself to Hochmah. When this is accomplished, and he doesn't tell you how, then one then looks down at the other Sefirot. Only then one does begin climbing the Sefirot, beginning at the lowest. In other words, you have to start at, like I say, the speed of mind is faster than the speed of light. You have to put yourself there. You don't have to think about how I'm going to get there. Because if you're thinking about how I'm going to get there, you're in being a consciousness. Mm-hmm. You just have to be. Okay? Be in Hochmah, where the silence, the deafening out there in the Antarctic, you could put yourself in a space like that, or you could put yourself through breathing into the place of absolute silence, okay, where there's no thought. And only then are you able to go ahead and figure out the rest of the Sefirot, okay? When this is accomplished, one then looks down at the other Sefirot. Only then does one begin climbing the Sefirot at the lowest. You have to start from the highest, go to the lowest. Like I say, I think this is like, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Climb the tree, starting from the highest rung, okay? Like the appearance of lightning. Okay, so there's 10 Sefirot. The statement was that their vision is like the appearance of lightning. So what do we have about vision? Sight, okay? Not to get too much into it, but obviously it means meditation and visualization. So, like the appearance of lightning, what does this mean? This is taken from the verse, and the chayot ratzo vashov, the chayot, which are angels, running and returning like the appearance of lightning, bazak. Okay? The word bazak is found only in this one place in the Bible. You don't have it any other place. It is usually translated as lightning or a spark. According to other interpretations, bazak denotes a flashing meteor or a bursting bubble. According to these opinions, the Sefer Yetzirah is stating that the Sefirot can only be visualized for an instant, and then they vanish. So when we're doing meditation, so it might come as a flash. And you know something? A lot of times it's not necessarily in the Sefirot, but you'll see. Even when you're involved in Hochmah consciousness, things are going to flash, and then it's going to disappear. Don't freak out. It's part of the process. God made the world very rhythmic. Rhythms. Everything is about the rhythms. Okay? Things go up and down. The moon cycles. The waves go back and forth. We have our rhythms. And the Sefirot work in rhythms. Okay? So, and the language used as lightning. Okay? According to, the great Kabbalist Rabbi Moshe de Leon, best known as the publisher of the Zohar, offers an interesting analogy. This is where it is. When the Sefirot are seen in a mystical vision, their appearance is like sunlight reflected on a wall from a bowl of water. We get that imagery? As long as the bowl is absolutely still, the reflected image is clear. But the slightest vibration causes it to break up and oscillate wildly. So this is where the mind you have to get your mind. I was reading once a book that my father-in-law, Chusu Yegin Elena, loaned me, but he didn't let me hold on to it because it was a yoga book. It was How to Know God. Great yoga book. Very small, old, I don't know where he got it. but it was great because it gave an imagery very much similar to that. That when the water is still, you have to still the waters. Our minds are like those waters. And if you can achieve a stillness in your mind, right? So then things can become clear. But as long as there's waves in the mind, which is like, when do you get rid of that, Rabbi? Right? With the bombardment that we're completely flooded with. Okay? The answer is in the letters, actually. Okay? Just to jump ahead. But the idea here is think about it. You take a deep breath and you try to calm the mind down. And only then can a person actually access a vision. Similarly, a clear vision of the Sefirot would be possible in theory, but only if the mind were absolutely still and calm. The slightest exterior thought, however, destroys the image completely. When the mind is in a state where it can visualize the Sefirot, it is disturbed by the most minute distractions. Okay? So that's why it's lightning, because of course our minds are always thinking. Okay? To get yourself on that requires training. Their limit has no end. This is obviously derived from the verse, "For every limit I have seen an end. Your commandment is very broad." This is a verse in Psalms. The Hebrew word for limit here is tachlit. That's what it brings down. Tachlitan ein lehen sof. Ein lehen kate, sorry. It's an interesting word, tachlit. Tachlit also means completion or end, or ultimate.
Goal?
Yeah, like the tachlis. What is the tachlit of the creation? What is the goal? No tachlis. Goal. Cut to the get to the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? That's the end.
Tachlis, no?
Right. Finish this. Okay? So let's see if we can plug this into the meaning here. So it is derived from the word kala. That's interesting. Who would think that tachlis comes from kala? Kala means to complete or finish. You wonder now about a chatan and kala. A bride is called a kala. Okay?
But
What's the difference?
No, you're a match.
She's finished.
No.
They're completed now.
When you have a chatan,
It's
when
completion.
You have a kala, they're complete.
She's a
Now
vessel.
you're complete.
Women in general are the vessel. Okay? In terms of the woman-man relationship.
Giver and the receiver.
They're the ones who take the seed and they produce a baby. Okay? A whole new entity. Unbelievable creation. Right? Us men are clueless. So, totally clueless. My wife never stops from reminding me, you're clueless. Okay? And I'm okay with it. So, in any case, because I'm a man, I was made that way. So in any case, so you wonder by kala, meaning to complete or to finish, as in the heaven and earth were finished, kala. The word tachlit also denotes purpose, since when something fulfills its purpose, it is said to be completed and fulfilled. So here, tachlitan ein lehen case, meaning their completedness. There's no end, okay? When we say their limit has no end, we're talking about there's no end to their purpose, which is kind of wild when you think about it. Wouldn't it have a definitive purpose? So it's kind of wild, but for us in terms of our earthly plane, if a person feels and gets the sense that they fulfilled something very huge, let's say some big goal, they always have to seek another goal. A person can never finish, right, achieving goals. I think about the Sulam. Rabbi Yehuda Leib Ashlag completed so much when he was in Poland. And then when he moved to Israel, and he was the rabbi in Kiryat Moshe, just after the war, he sought another purpose, okay? As we know from Jacob, Yaakov Avinu, Jacob wanted to settle in the land. Vayeshev Yaakov, right? Jacob wanted to settle, and God says no settling for tzaddikim, right? You have to constantly grow, and you have to constantly achieve. We don't have the concept of retirement, do we? No. Judaism doesn't have the concept of retirement. Because we always have to achieve, we always have to goal, there's always something to fix. Right? We learn that from the Sefirot. They don't have an end goal. It's a goal, but it's only going to turn into another goal. The expression their limit has no end, kates, can be compared to the earlier expression their measure has no end, which we learned in last week's Mishnah. Both words, kates and sof, denote an end, but the shade of meaning is somewhat different. The word sof is derived from the root of safa, which means to cease to exist. The term kates, on the other hand, comes from katzatz, which means to cut off. Hence, the end implied by sof is where something ceases to exist, while kates implies the point where it is cut off, that is, its extreme boundary or limit. As one authority puts it, sof is an end in relation to that which follows it, and kates is an end with regard to that which precedes it. Like we had mikates, in Parshas Mikates was an end to something that was before it. Right? Sof is only the end of something that is going to be more. Okay, so Ein Lehem Kates, let's read on and see if we could put it together. When the Sefer Yetzirah spoke earlier of the Sefirot as extensions, meaning extensions of the oneness of God, the text says that they have no sof. This indicates that there is no place where they cease to exist. No matter how far one goes, this is infinity of extension. That's what that's called. By Ein Lehem Sof, they have no end. Okay? That means just like what I told you at the beginning, when there was a projector, there's a film, and then there's the screen, and the screen is the world. Right? That means the entire world comes from these 10 statements of creation, the 10 Sefirot, all of the Torah, all of the mitzvahs, all of creation is extended from that. That means there's no place where the 10 Sefirot don't exist. Similarly, when God called Ein Sof, when God is called Ein Sof, which means without end, it also means that there's no place where he ceases to exist. Just to understand that. Okay? One of the highest understandings in the meditation I always use when I'm praying is that you're standing in front of Ein Sof. In the Kabbalah, the highest name that we'll give is Ein Sof. Okay? We have Yud Kei Vav Kei, you have a lot of names of God, Adonut, but when you really want to get into the space, you really want to sit and contemplate Ein Sof. Okay? Which is, there's no end. It's a shlila, it's a mila shlili, it's a negation word, means not. Okay? There is no end. Or what I like to say actually is all there is. Meaning there's no place where he ceases to exist, which means God is all there is. Here on the other hand, that was in terms of Sof. Here on the other hand, the Sefer Yetzirah is speaking of the Sefirot as they are seen in a mystical vision. The text then says that their purpose, completion, and outcome have no limit. Even though the Sefirot are seen only as a flash, there's no limit to the insight that they can imbue to the individual. Okay? Okay, let's go on. We got a few more minutes. You might not have it on the sheets, but you can got to share. Okay? In his word in them, so that's the first part of the Mishnah. 10 Sefirot of nothingness, their vision is the appearance of lightning. And their limit has no end, okay? Which means there's no end to the insights that one can gain from these Sefirot. In his word, and his word in them, meaning his word, meaning God's word in them, is running and returning, like the angels. This also alludes to the same verse that he said, the chayot running and returning like the appearance of lightning. It is as discussed again earlier in 1:8, okay? The phrase, his word, it means devaro. Others, however, vocalize this as davro, which means they speak. Meaning, who speaks? Okay? The Sefirot speak. This line then reads, they speak of them as running and returning. Who's the they? Okay? The angels? Let's go back here. So he has two basic understandings of his word in them is running and returning. The Hebrew is v'dabru behen baratzo v'shov. Okay, so really it means they speak in them in a way it's called ratzo v'shov, which is running and returning. Everything in creation is running and returning. Okay? Running and returning, yeah.
Running from or running to?
That's great that you say that. Okay? Really, the idea really is obviously is running to and then returning. Every single thing we are doing is that. We cannot stay in a state of complete light forever. Constant.
So you run to and then you return where it was before?
Yes. As far as my understanding. But then again, I read it a long time ago, so I didn't get a chance to go this far.
Like running away, but you're returning to Hashem.
Could be also, it's both. I'm telling you, right now, it's both.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's always this kind of running and returning, fluctuating. The atoms are constantly running and returning. Okay? The subatomic particles, sorry, I can't even say it right. If you'll think of them, it's really quite amazing in terms of quantum physics, right? Everything's made up of atoms, right? And they say, well, there's more space if you call them subatomic particles, which really they're coming out with, it's really not. They're kind of sometimes are, and they're sometimes like waves. And now they got superstrings, right? But still, even if you'll call it a superstring to some degree, this minuscule string of vibration, it's still, there's more of the strings than there is, there's more space of the atom than there is the subatomic particles, right? 2 flies in a cathedral, imagine, right? And everything is made up of these atoms. 2 flies in a cathedral. Wait a minute, go on. What's going on? And we're all made, and everything's made up of atoms, and each of the subatomic particles which make up the atom are like 2 flies. In other words, there's more space than there is atoms. What's going on?
You would think that this was solid.
Right, because God wants you to believe that it's solid, okay, at this moment, right? The idea here is they're flashing so fast that it gives the appearance of something solid, okay? In other words, when something like a fan, and you have 3 prongs of a fan and it's spinning real fast, so you see a circle, right? So it gives an appearance of something solid, but really it's not. I love the famous story of the Bedichba Rabbi, who they were going to raise money. They needed to get to this certain place real fast, and they were heading to the town, and there was a wall around it. And for them to go to the gate and to get to that person, to get the money to redeem the poor captive guy who was in prison, the Bar Tivzer said, there's no time, we're going through the wall. And he started to go through the wall. No problem. These guys they understand it's all a game. They're on that level. Till the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who was with him, the original, says, no, there's time. We can go around. He grabbed him and says, there's time. We don't have to go through. Right? So, we don't really know what reality is, but somehow we're here. Okay? But we're trying to get a glimpse. And the stairway or the tree to climb is the Sefirot. So it speaks of they speak. This line then reads, they speak of them as running and returning. V'dabru behem, that's how he wants to read it. Okay? Not his word, as the translation tells you. It says his word in them is running and returning. No. It says they speak of them as running and returning, and it's applying to angels. Okay, this teaches that one cannot focus for any length of time on any of the Sefirot. The mind can concentrate and see them as a flash of lightning, but only for an instant. Then one must return. One oscillates between running and returning, peaking for an instant, and then immediately running to one's normal mental state, because otherwise you're going to go crazy. The Kabbalists note that running denotes Hochmah, and returning implies being. Fantastic. In other words, go to the state of no thought, but then you have to retract from the state and going back into consciousness. Okay? To Bina consciousness. Understanding. Bina means understanding. Hochmah means wisdom. As discussed earlier, one can only visualize the Sefirot with Hochmah consciousness. through the non-verbal part of the mind. Such Hochmah consciousness is very difficult to maintain, since the mind normally functions in a state of verbal Bina consciousness, as mentioned earlier. The only way to attain Hochmah consciousness is to swing back and forth between Hochmah and Bina. It is only during the instant of pure Hochmah consciousness that the Sefirot can be perceived, when you're in the no-thought zone. The Hebrew word run is usually roots. Here, however, the commentaries note that the word for the root of the word is ratzah. And this is apparently the only place in the entire Bible where this root is found. According to the Midrash, this root is related to both to roots, to run, and to ratzah, meaning will or desire. How interesting how both of these have the same root. One is desire and one is running. The word ratzah, therefore, has the implication of running with one's will, or impelling the will to concentrate on something beyond its grasp. This indicates the mental effort through which the Sefirot are visualized. The Sefer Yetzirah relates running and returning to speech. Okay, now he's flipping, okay? You got to know when he flips, because he wants to throw things at you, okay? The Sefer Yetzirah relates running and returning to speech. Speech exists only in relation to Bina consciousness, since this is the verbal part of the mind. As long as a person is normally in a state of Bina consciousness, he can only visualize the Sefirot as a flash, running and returning. Okay, a different way of putting it. In other words, while you're in your Bina consciousness, you're only going to be able to partake or experience the Sefirot in a flash. Okay? Sound, you can make an inference. If you're in the state of a different state of consciousness, it won't be a flash. Okay? But listen, the idea of Ratzov Shov that I said before, we are all experiencing it. They're flashes. Okay? Our normal standard prayer service that we do in the morning, the Shachrit service, is Ratzo Vashov, running and returning. We ascend 4 levels, right, through the different levels of the tefillah. You start off with the simple blessings in the morning, the bathroom blessing, washing hands, that you have clothes. Then you go to the hymns of praise. That's the higher level of consciousness with the angels, and you have to get yourself in the mood of praising. Then you enter the Shema realm of consciousness, ascending higher and higher until you're finally in the silent prayer, which is Shmona Esrei, right? And it's good even sometimes not do what other people do, that they run through it, but to sit silently in that moment where it's just you and God, and you're just trying to divest yourself of all thoughts. Ratzo v'shov. And then after that, if you'll notice, according to the Nusach Sfar, it's exactly the same order of descension. Okay? You descend back down for after Shemona Esrei, you have Tachanun, and then you do Ashrei, Unuvalet Zion, right? And then you go back down to the Psalm of the Day, and then you're going to Pitum HaKatoris, which is the incense offering, which is the final descension, where you're bringing the insight back down. We grab the insight, and then you have to go ahead and integrate the insight into this world. We ascend, and then we descend. We are also in the form of running and returning all the time. Okay? And even when you're in a class, you get a flash of inspiration, and then all of a sudden, what are you going to do about it? Right? Then you have to spend the time integrating it. Ratzov V'shov happens all the time, but that's as much as a detail of a description that I could give you. Okay? Because the rest is your own personal experience, and we'll end here.
Rabbi, in the service, after